Well, welcome. I'm Sean Lothar, and this is Caregivers Wear Plaid, brought to you by the Lothar Legacy Library and my company, Stealth Awareness Inc., better known as Hidden Knowledge. Why Caregivers Wear Plaid, the book? Well, that's the purpose of this video, to give you, the caregiver, the advocate, what it means to be that caregiver, that advocate for the one you love, and insight into all the various circumstances, the doctors, and yes, the hospital visits too. And most importantly, how both you and your wife, significant other, can lead a fuller life with lupus together as a team. Now, our book is designed to accelerate your learning process on what to expect and how to deal with the various circumstances you will find along the path of lupus progression. We as men were not nurtured when we were young to be caregivers, but here we are, and I congratulate you for wanting to learn more about being a good caregiver, advocate for the one you love. I've been to many lupus summits and workshops over the years. Often the host or keynote speaker will ask, how many caregivers are in the audience? And then ask them all to raise their hand. And other than thanking them for being at the summit or workshop, the topic turns to lupus and never the caregiver. Well, as I like to say, amor vincit omni, love conquers all, and it is undoubtedly a challenge when living with someone else's limitations. But that is the reality, and that is the opportunity to become more today than you were yesterday. So I hope you will follow along for the next 13 minutes. The more you know, the better off you are in understanding what your loved one is dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And the better you can be that caregiver advocate. So who am I? Well, I'm caregiver advocate to my Patty, who has had lupus for over 50 years now. She's a survivor, and I guess I am too. Well, Patty and I are both former board chairs for the Lupus Foundation of America's North Carolina chapter. I followed her 2 years after her term was up. We have counseled many couples, husbands, and significant others to the extent that it made sense to write a book that extensively covers our experience with lupus, doctors, hospitals, support groups, and life in general. I know that if you embrace anything in our book, the hidden messages, the tools, attitude, and desire for you to use, your life will become more rewarding, insightful, and caring for the one you love and each other. Well, those hidden messages are the aha moments when something read or said in our video strikes the bell of awareness. Now, we have found the power of a couple reading Caregivers Wear Plaid together, turning one page at a time, not only enhances one's awareness of the emotions, the fears, and the disease, but also promotes conversation that will bring the two of you closer together than I surmise you've been ever been before. Well, that is what happens when someone gives help to another's needs. Living with lupus is a team effort. You play a very important role as the disease progresses. Our hope is that it will not progress and will go into remission or a cure is found. But for our purposes, don't hold your breath. Caregivers Wear Plaid is 33 chapters of everything I've learned with Patty as a caregiver advocate and that of others in a similar situation. Think not that we do not continue to learn along the way. In the dedication, you'll learn about Patty and I, and we were first loves in 4th grade, dated in high school, and did not see each other for over 40 years until we got back together 20 plus years ago. That means we're getting on in age. Our book has 3 segments: the caregiver's lament, the autoimmune conundrum, and strategies. Strategies for the caregiver, significant other, or wife on how to manage lupus and your new way of life. So, okay, in chapter 1, I talk about the power of choice, the choices you have to make in your life. As you know, it will change. This is not a bad thing. Chapter 2 talks about living within your wife's limitations, and we have a video on YouTube that will help you understand what that means. The video is listed below. Chapter 3 is a baker's dozen, 13 things you need to know about any autoimmune disease. Chapter 4, the privacy of pain, is a very serious situation, that of understanding your wife's mental, physical, and emotional pain she keeps to herself. Chapter 5 is the elephant in the room, probably one of the greatest fears your wife has in respect to you and your commitment to your relationship. Chapter 6, what is a caregiver? Chapter 7, what about you as a caregiver? This is not an easy role to play, and one needs to take care of themselves too. Let's face it, who does your wife have to rely on without you? It's not a catch-22 question, as the phrase goes. You need time for yourself, and both of you need to understand and respect that. Chapter 8, what about your wife? Stories of others who have made life work with lupus. Chapter 9, you're a patient too. When you join your wife at a doctor's visit, know that the doctor is looking at you too as a patient. How you present yourself will speak so loudly that the doctor can hardly hear a word you're saying. Doctors are trained to do that. Chapter 10, how to explain lupus to others. You'll come to know who your friends are, and don't expect family and relatives to know what is happening. They have their own busy lives, and no one really knows what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes unless you wear the same pair. Chapter 11, the 5 stages of acceptance. This is the 5th stage of grief, which is acceptance. Grief occurs in many different ways, especially when it affects you directly. Well, the second section of our book, The Autoimmune Conundrum, deals with lupus, and as coined by the Lupus Foundation of America, the cruel mystery. A lot to know in this section, so let's get to it. Chapter 12, The Autoimmune Conundrum, gives you a short history of lupus, how it can affect internal organs, and many general questions about the disease. Chapter 13, The Autoimmune Triggers. You and your wife's understanding what it can trigger a flare of her disease can minimize the effects of the disease. Good stuff to know. In Chapter 14, I talk about the cycle of lupus. I've never seen this before until I realized that the journey of lupus has many different phases, and I talked about them in this chapter. I've yet to have anyone dispute my theory, though I'm sure it can be added to. Chapter 15, Till Death Do Us Part. Yeah, in this chapter we talk about the legal preparations one should take in the event one of you dies. I know it's a little morbid, but we have seen more loved ones die before their time due to lupus. Now, lupus can affect internal organs such as the kidneys, the heart, and brain, and lead to an early death. As Michael J. Fox said in reference to Parkinson's disease, you don't die from Parkinson's, you die with it. The same is true with lupus and many other autoimmune diseases. In Chapter 16, dealing with the medical community, we provide a medical sheet for the nurses at every doctor's appointment, or emergency room doctor, or the hospitalist. Page 97 in Caregivers Wear Plaid gives you the outline to create your own list, and it's more than just medicines. Chapter 17, the referral. Know that your wife or significant other will ultimately need to see a rheumatologist or other specialist. If you suspect your wife has lupus, see the 11 symptoms of lupus on page 112. You can educate your primary doctor and have them refer your wife to see a rheumatologist. That sounds condescending to doctors, and it's not meant to be. The average primary doctor receives little training on lupus in medical school. Some say 1 hour or less. That in itself is amazing when one considers how prevalent lupus is. So we educate our doctors. You'll need a referral to see most specialists because of insurance. And Chapter 18, Your Child Has Lupus, a perspective of all the issues surrounding a young child diagnosed with lupus. Chapter 19, we talk about the outlook for lupus, new treatments, etc., because this is an ever-changing advancement of research and clinical trials. The best place to find current information is the Lupus Foundation of America's website, lupus.org. Well, that was the Autoimmune Conundrum. Now let's get to Caregivers Wear Plaid, the third segment of our book, Strategies. Chapter 20 talks about strategies to counteract fatigue. This is a major issue with most autoimmune diseases. Knowing the issues helps you better understand the differences between fatigue and being tired, two different realities. Chapter 21, The Power of Support Groups. Most women do not want to go to a bitch session with other women. Our experience with support groups is very positive, with structured meetings and a bonding and beneficial environment. The Lupus Foundation of America has support groups throughout America. If a support group is not near you, ideas on how to start one and receive support in the process are in this chapter. Chapter 22, What if your wife can no longer work? Well, this chapter talks about workplace accommodations, disability insurance, and the keys to applying for and receiving disability quickly. We also have a video of lupus patients with their experience of getting disability insurance. Simply go to our library, LotharLegacyLibrary.com, click on the Storytime tab, and you'll see the video listed with a direct link to view it. I have noted the link below also. Chapter 23, the sepsis concern, and this is major. Sepsis is the second leading cause of death in hospitals. Sepsis means decay and inflammation in the body. It also means that internal organ damage may be present, and the medical needs need to be addressed immediately. A very important chapter. Chapter 24, family, friends, and neighbors. Mostly they don't get it, do they? And it can strain family relationships and others. You will learn who your friends really are quickly. In this chapter, I share how to deal with these issues. Chapter 25, medicines. There are a lot of them. Some she wants to be on and some she does not, but are helpful, like prednisone. Chapter 26, your pharmacist loves you. Get to know your pharmacist. They know more about drug interaction than most doctors and can be a great resource for your wife. We talk about the importance of staying with one pharmacist for her medicines, not jumping around, as this can make it difficult from a records retention standpoint. If she is applying for disability, as I say, you need to think ahead. Chapter 7, don't feel guilty. I have been through this, especially when I went off to play golf knowing Patty was sitting at home by herself. Know that you must take care of yourself, as the doctor says. You're a patient too, as the caregiver. Chapter 28, dealing with holidays and special events. Now, many women with lupus, and I assume men too, find it difficult during the winter holidays. Less light during the full day and the stress of planning events can take its toll. So we share some ideas in this chapter on how to cope. Chapter 29, handling stress. A whole bunch of ideas on how to reduce stress. It's a big topic in people's lives, especially those living with a disabling autoimmune disease or other life-altering event. One day, having lunch with a colleague in a small town restaurant in North Carolina, on the wall was this sign: "Remember, stressed, spelled backwards, is desserts." Chapter 30, depression. It seems to be the common question when we are at any one of our doctors. Do you feel depressed? The doctor says. Duh, your wife says. Of course, I'm depressed. Wouldn't you be? But there are medications and coping skills that can help your wife and you too to reduce your depression. And we talk about some of those in this chapter. Chapter 31, lupus, sex, and pregnancy. Now, this is probably the favorite chapter for guys, as they want sex, and I surmise their wife or significant other does too. We share a few tips in this arena of thought and know that with proper OBGYN care, pregnancy and the prognosis of a healthy baby are doable. Chapter 32, equipment if needed. Over time, as Patty's disease has progressed, we have come to rely on specialty equipment to make life a little easier for her and me. Getting around, a comfortable chair, even in the shower. This chapter shares our experience with many items that can help life be a little bit more tolerable. And finally, chapter 33, wrapping it all up. A few final thoughts. And before you run away, the final pages of Caregiver Wear Plaid explains what the Lothar Legacy Library is all about. It's an easy resource to direct others who would find this book helpful by going to our digital library for the book and video resources, or you can direct them directly to Amazon.com and search for Caregivers Wear Plaid or our videos on our YouTube channel. Now, we hope you will spread our message. In my perspective, the caregiver is the most important person in their loved one's life. They are the lover, coach, friend, and a second set of eyes and ears. Well, that's pretty good. I knocked this video out in less than 15 minutes. If you found the video informative, the next step is to get our book. It's 220 pages packed with a lot of useful information and guidance. Your purchase helps us keep the mission going to better inform caregivers to the vital role they fulfill through greater awareness and understanding. And give us a like below, subscribe to our channel, and let another know about us. As always, Amor Vincit Omnia. I'm Sean Lothar, and I hope you'll take care. See you next time.